First of all, nice to be here with all of you. I'm excited to be at an impact investing and entrepreneurship-focused conference in Marin. You all heard both Josh and I live in Marin. We live in Marin, and we love Marin. And happy to be here helping to build some community here around these cool projects and issues. So focusing on Marin, Josh, you built a startup here. Tell us what that was like.
It feels like years and years ago. We started an internet video company in Sausalito. Actually, it started, if you guys know where Robata Sushi is, in that little area, we had a little office, and there were just two of us, and we started figuring out how we could enable all of you, to share your personal media in a web way as you wanted. But it did start at Burning Man, but that's a whole other story that we don't have time for today. But I came back with all these videos and photos, and I wanted to figure out how to share them. So yeah, we started in that little business center, and then we ended up in a really cool spot across from Fish on Gate 5 Road in Sausalito.
So what made you decide to found the company in Marin, and how did that work?
We were lazy. We all lived in Marin, and we figured we could try and create this business there, and it was we didn't know if we could do it because it was still pretty early. I think it was back in 2004, 5, and one of our biggest challenges was recruiting. Like, how are we going to recruit people to go work here? We were building a big company, and so we ended up just saying, you know what, we're going to let people come to the office when they want, work from home when they want, have commuter hours so they could commute when they wanted to and from the office. And we ended up building, a 50-person company in Sausalito, and we had people coming from the North Bay, even more north, the South Bay, East Bay. And so we had this, maybe only 10 of us actually lived in Marin. And so it kind of worked out.
Yeah. What was the ultimate outcome of that venture?
It's probably on many of your TVs. It's called Crackle, and it was acquired by Sony back in 2008. And it's exciting for me to admit I still like seeing that Crackle logo appear on my TV when I turn it on. And it's a company that's in the internet, kind of like a Netflix competitor.
And based on that experience of founding a company in Marin, would you do it today? And what is your advice for people who are running companies in Marin or thinking about it?
I mean, it's even easier today because you have your kind of maybe your core team, which is based here, but you can have people living all over the world working at your company. So there's never been an easier time, I think, to set up, a shop in Marin County because you have the workforce of the world at your fingertips.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing that story.
All right, Matt, let's go to you. Let's see. Matt, we're going to get more serious with this question I have for you. Here we're talking about startups and impact investing, and you're focused on decarbonization at Breakthrough.
That's right.
But the problem seems like it's so pervasive and so global. What inspires you to think that startups and the venture community can actually solve this problem? I know that we in venture think we can solve everything. So, tell us more about that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, let me ask, so how many folks out here are involved in some way, impact is a big category, right? How many people, raise your hands if you're involved in climate in some way. Wow. Okay, how about health? Got it. How about education? Okay, what am I missing? Is that everybody? Recreation. Yeah, awesome, good. I like to recreate. That's positive. helps me make a positive impact on the world. So it was maybe like half climate and then half the other big important things too. So awesome that you guys are working on this stuff. And how many people are doing something that is venture backed or might be venture backed in any of those categories? Okay, and how many aren't then, don't think the venture is the right path for them? how many maybe nonprofits and
those are the
local
smart
businesses. Yeah, don't. Oh God. Cool. Well, so venture, I think there's a lot of talk about like what's the way to deploy climate or fix climate. Josh and I were just talking about trying to get regulations changed so it's easier to do rainwater capture systems, and that's not a venture oriented thing. You don't need venture capital to build tanks and tubes from gutters, but you do need to change regulations. So climate is such a multifaceted problem with regulations preventing good local action like that, and we all know we need to deploy of things that are working, like solar and EVs.
But Matt, do we have solar and EVs are fully mature? We don't need to do anything else there, do we?
Right. Solar. So this is where, from a venture perspective, where we think about it, there are a lot of completely unsolved problems like cement and steel, which combined are probably something like 15% of global emissions, and we really have no idea how to fix them. And then even in solar and EVs, our view is, yes, we should be deploying, but if I told you I could cut the cost of solar by 25%, do you think we would deploy more?
Right.
And if I told you that I could double the range of EVs while cutting the cost by 20%, do you think more people would buy EVs? So those are the sorts of things we're investing in, lots of technologies that are for the unsolved problems like cement and steel and fertilizer and aviation and all kinds of things like that. And we're trying to make these things that we should be deploying as fast as we can even cheaper and easier and quieter and cleaner and faster and better, so they deploy faster all on their own.
And we could digress and talk about policy here all day long. Like even more recently, there was an effort to basically throw a $60 a month fee at residential solar owners that would have made it much less exciting for most to move to solar. So we have to fight policy like that.
Right. Yeah, we've got to prevent ourselves from going backwards from a policy perspective frequently.
How do you change behavior?
As a venture capitalist, I don't think about how to changing behavior. I hope that there are a lot of people out there thinking about that and working on it. We try to make it easy for people so that they just naturally change their behavior by offering products that are as good or better than what they might already be using, like concrete. Let's take concrete. It's going to be pretty hard to get people to think about better concrete. Who thinks about concrete? Wow. I mean, this is a weird audience. Not that many people usually raise their hands.
It's Marin. It's going to be weird.
True. But still, there was probably 90% of you don't think about it. And so, we've got several companies there that are making concrete that, or will be, or are, that is, the same cost or similar costs, and it might actually be stronger, or it might cure faster, or those sorts of things, while being lower carbon, so that people just adopt it.
And while in Marin, we know that all of us are willing to make sacrifices to green the planet. The rest of the world, most of the world, is not, and especially the developing world shouldn't have to now that they have access to more capital. And so we really focus, as Matt said, on finding lower cost, cooler, better features, more convenient solutions that help people go green without making a sacrifice.
Right. So, through my answers, I'm talking about a lot of big, hard techie, deep techie kind of stuff, Josh. And your firm focuses more than we do on software and behavior and consumer solutions and enterprise solutions and that sort of thing. So you started in tech. How many people here once worked in, broadly defined tech and have now moved to climate tech or healthcare or education? Oh, not that many. So, I guess I can't ask you all what your backgrounds were before. But tell us about how you've made this shift, Josh, into more in climate tech.
I think it was kind of years in the making, even though there was a moment when I actually had to jump. I started a nonprofit years ago, kind of worked with the NBA and about 100 nonprofits to create greater awareness of their actions that were having an impact on the planet. But I think when COVID hit, I felt like I had to do something, and so I took a 5-month sabbatical from my job, and I started a task force for the governor to source private company solutions to many of the challenges the state was facing from COVID. And I would say that that experience was exciting and at times really frustrating, but it definitely gave me religion around this planetary problem is not going to be solved just by nonprofits. In fact, we have to tap the private world to solve it. And I think 70% of emissions go through the top 100 companies. So there's no solution that doesn't involve them reducing their footprints. So I kind of had to do it.
Yeah. And what are some of the highlights and lowlights of that shift as you've moved into climate tech?
Well, lucky to have people like Matt, truly, who have been doing it for a long time, who are welcoming those of us that jumped from tech to climate tech with open arms. I think that's going to continue for a while. At some point, probably the elbows get a little sharper, but right now, I was able to learn so much from Matt and other friends of ours who are in venture, and also I didn't try and pretend I knew what I didn't. I really was honest about what I kept saying. I was in third grade. I was learning so much about climate tech. I will say, so the highlight was really everyone welcomed me in, and I studied and read, and there's a lot to read. So I felt good about my education. I guess there are ideas that I had from general tech that I would talk about in climate tech, and those ideas would get pushed down. Like, hey, we have to remove all of cattle from the planet. And I heard that, and I'm like, that's not going to happen anytime soon. They're still causing damage to the planet. What if we reduce the methane that cows release? And so I got a lot of pushback from that, but then we ultimately invested in a company that has citrus and garlic additive that reduces methane by 1/3 from cattle, and it's going to make a difference. So I think there are ideas that if you have them, there are scalable ideas from general tech and mindsets that can be applied to climate tech. And I think if we had more time, I would tell you about a story that Matt and I invested in a company together that kind of flew in the face of what a lot of other investors were thinking about batteries and storage, but we came together on it, and we feel like it's going to have a great outcome.
Yeah, yeah. Any recommendations for the folks in the audience that are either making the switch or thinking about raising venture capital in climate?
Right now with the recession looming, I think a lot of what we're looking at, and I think Matt is also looking at, is which technologies can just create greater efficiency in the supply chain, right? So just by creating better efficiency, you're going to create greater energy efficiency, and removing steps in the supply chain is going to make it more efficient for all. So I would think about, in addition to starting R&D kinds of companies that are also important, think about starting companies that create efficiency, and when you create this efficiency, you actually get sustainability.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
On to you.
On to me.
Yeah. So there's a view, someone who might jump from tech to climate tech, or from any industry to climate tech.
Yeah. There is that view, and I think it prevents a lot of people from starting climate tech sort of companies or ventures, and from joining climate tech companies that these are big, complex technical problems, and if I don't have a PhD in mechanical engineering or molecular biology or something to do methane reduction, I can't do it. And I think that's crazy talk, and it's really limiting people from joining the space. And the way I like to think about this, it sounds like maybe some of you folks out there do too, is every dollar that consumers spend and that businesses spend, in other words, the entire economy, has emissions, and we need to reduce them all. And there are things that are massive problems, like cement, aviation, whatever. Vehicles that we know are the really big targets, and clearly we need to put a lot of attention and resources on those. But all of it, we got to fix all of it, and every 25 megatons here or 25 megatons there matter. So I encourage people that are thinking about this to think about what do they love, and what do they know, and what is their skill set, and work on making those things more efficient. Work on better replacements for those, work on changing human behavior in those areas if that's their thing.
Okay, so we both agree supply chain efficiency is an area of interest, but what are the other sectors in climate that you love right now?
I've mentioned aviation a couple of times. I'm spending quite a bit of time on aviation. And there's also weird ways that we can affect this problem. We're spending some time on methane destruction right now, ways to destroy methane in the atmosphere, which I think is pretty interesting. We're also looking at a lot of different carbon sequestration things, and of course, there's the big direct air capture, but we also have some other really crazy off the wall ideas and ways to bury carbon that at some point we'll talk more about. I'm looking at things like Earth observation, like how to observe the Earth from airplanes and space in order to make agriculture more efficient, and forestry and wildfire prevention is a big thing that we're spending time on. We've got some companies in, big thing that's really relevant for us here in Marin County. We don't want these beautiful places to burn down. Water is another issue we're spending some time on. I'm spending some time on right now. And buildings. Buildings is an area I spend a lot of time. So much emissions from buildings in the U.S. Contributes 40%. And, lots of things that we can fix, both operationally about buildings and how they're built and renovated.
Yeah, so basically everything.
Basically everything.
I mean, like I asked a bunch of students that I was talking to that came into my office, and I asked them all who, when they graduate, wants to work in sustainability, and like half, maybe a quarter of them raised their hands, and I looked around and I said, well, what do you want to do? And I kind of like you did, and it turns out that they're all going to work in sustainability because sustainability is in everything. It's kind of a separate thing at a company now, its own group, but it will soon be in everything. There won't be a separate sustainability group. There'll be sustainability in everything, accounting, carbon accounting, and metrics that are tied to performance in climate. So I think that we're just catching, the rules are changing, they haven't changed, but when these rules change, sustainability will be in everything we do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing to do is do more with less, and you'll produce less emissions and less waste.